Welcome back to another episode of the Autonomy podcast, and I'm really excited to be joined by one of our clients, Keshav, today, who talks us through his phenomenal journey from a few years and how he's been able to get into the shape that he has, whilst going through COVID, while setting up a business, having a new one, a little young kid, and loads of other factors that has come into being quite an obstacle-driven challenge. So he's going to join us now, and we are going to go through his journey. Stay tuned.
Grover. I live in.
There you
go. Okay. All right. I'll restart. My name is Keshav Grover, and I live in Michigan in the United States in the Metro Detroit area, Motor City. For those of you that think about Detroit as that, or the home of the Detroit Pistons and Detroit Lions. And I know Nathan's a big sports junkie, so he's into our local sports, even though we're still struggling to get our football team together. Yeah. But although our college sports are doing better, but nonetheless, grew up in this area, still here. I'm an integrative and functional medicine physician. I also have an aesthetics practice, and I am very passionate about health and wellness, and also about helping people achieve their goals in my practice. And I definitely give a lot of credit to Nathan and his team for helping me understand the process myself about what a transformation really requires, whether that's mental, physical, emotional, or whatever transformation anybody's going through. And I think that he really has put together a great system that is able to be used by many individuals, regardless of where they are in their life. So, definitely hats off to him and his team for doing that. And even people that he's worked with before. And so the other part of it is that, from my journey with Nathan, back in 2018, one of our friends who, Hirsch Kavishvar, who Nathan, as well. He went through a similar transformation, and he had a significant amount of body fat loss, as well as he got pretty lean and toned. And he did also gain some muscle mass in the process. And he had a pretty remarkable before and after post that he did. And my wife and I were totally floored by it, and so many other people we knew were floored by it, because this was just not someone we recognized. And at that time, Hirsch had moved to California. We hadn't seen him in probably 6 months to a year or so. At that point, once he was finished with his process, and we were like, "Wow! This guy can do it."
Video for a very important announcement. I want to invite you all to our Facebook group. We have a 6 Phases to Forever Facebook group, which is a part of our coaching process that is free, that you can get lots and lots of value on a week-to-week basis. I go live once a week. There's plenty of content in there, and there's always special bonus material. You're looking at getting in shape, or how to stay in shape forever. So if you are wanting that, the link will be here somewhere, and then also it'll be in the description. So guys, see you there, and you get to see my ugly mug on a week-to-week basis.
Is this possible for us? And so we talked to Hirsch a lot more about the process. At the time, he was, the coaching system service that he used. We looked into it as well, and that's kind of where Nathan and my wife's paths crossed. And so we kind of looked at it and said, okay, is this something we can do? I think we debated it for about a couple of months, and I think it was in February of 2019 is when we started. And from that point onwards till the summer of, and actually it's interesting because Nathan and a few other coaches, as well as Hirsch and a few other guys that have gone through this process that are in the transformation community, that we've all kind of gotten to become friends over the years. We kind of were thinking of doing a photo shoot in, I believe it was like August or something, if I remember, Nathan.
Yeah, right? It was going to be September.
Yeah, August or September in California. And, we were all set to do it. And then, we're getting close to the point. And at that point, I had lost I believe it was like around 45 pounds or so of
Yeah.
body fat. And so, but the issue that I think I was having at that time is I wasn't as muscular as I wanted to be.
Mm.
And at the same point, also, my wife had, we found out that she was expecting in July.
Yeah.
And so in early July. And at that point, what was actually beautiful was that we found out just as we were leaving for a friend's wedding that she was expecting. And I didn't find out until we were actually at the wedding, we were in Wisconsin, actually, which is the next state over, across the lake. And so, but at that point, she had reached her goals for how much weight she wanted to lose. And, she hit the number she wanted to. So I was very proud of her, proud of the efforts we did for each other. And of course, with your guidance at that point, it was definitely very satisfying, especially because I remember going to the wedding. We saw a lot of friends that we hadn't seen in a long time, and they were all like, "Oh wow, like you guys look great." And what did you do? Or like, were you guys taking steroids? I mean, jokingly, people would make those comments, right? I mean, I'm sure you've heard that too. And then, and so, we decided at that point after that our time would be better suited to take a little bit of a vacation and experience things that we may not be able to after the baby would come. And so, and lo and behold, also COVID came, so that also shut down traveling for sure, for many people, or for most of the world. And so, I'm glad that we made the decision not to do the photo shoot then, and to do it at a time when I was in a position where I looked my best for the time being, and also just to appreciate where we had come and where we were going with the start of our new family. And so, that's kind of the transformation journey in a abridged format. But the thing that a lot of times people don't see are the weekly. It's not going to be that you're going to have like this. It's not a straight line, in terms of like where you're going to have consistent loss or consistent gains in muscle throughout the process. And that's always the intention, at least for me, that's the intention. But there will be weeks there were weeks that were tougher, with whether that was motivation, whether that was travel plans, or if we had weddings or we had social events, and how to navigate that process. And that's where I think the coaching part and the accountability part came into play strongly for us, because we knew what we had to do, but it was just more so making sure we did it and being mindful about it. And I think that so many of us know what we have to do. It's almost like when you're like driving a car, right? Like, you should go the speed limit, but I mean, there are many times where people will go over the speed limit, or they might, make a turn on a red light quicker than they should, or maybe they don't come to a full stop at a stop sign. But, that's the reason the police are there, to keep us accountable, right? I mean, it's, and so, I look at having a coach, not like a big brother, like where the police is watching you, but in the same sense that where what to do because you've discussed a plan, and at some point you get it into your daily routine of, okay, you wake up in the morning, how, you're going to hydrate, you're going to, whether you're taking creatine or you're taking other supplements that are in your regimen, you're doing that, you're figuring out where in your day you're going to do your training, where in your day you're going to do your steps or your cardio, or a combination of the both, whatever you and your coach have discussed. And so I think that's where the coaching is definitely great. And I think the beauty of what you guys have created, and a lot of people that you've worked with, your guys are pretty available in terms of, whether it's a WhatsApp or, even like last week I called you, and I think it was probably like you were probably in bed. You were like, man, why is this guy calling me? I had a question I needed to ask you, and you were available. So, and and I do apologize about that, but that's the thing, is that where a lot of times where people may invest a lot of money in personal training in a gym where it's a one-on-one session, or they will feel like, oh, I need more personalized attention, which is fine if that's what works for them. But for us, what we notice is that a lot of times when we would see trainers, and even before we got married, we had hired a trainer, and we were living in a condo building that had a small gym, few cardio equipments, and some free weights and some weight machines and whatnot. And so she would come in and she would train us for about 60 to 90 minutes, two or three times a week. And then she gave us some like nutritional guidelines of certain things to eat, certain things to avoid, and how to get more protein into our diet and whatnot to get the results. But it wasn't where it was as tailor-made of a package to say, okay, these are your actual goals. These are the macros. And for the people that are listening that may not know what macro is, macronutrient is essentially either a protein, a carbohydrate, or a fat, or a combination of all three. And what you should be consuming, when you should be consuming it, and what options you have. Because I know that there are people out there who are vegan or vegetarian, or maybe have some kind of religious observation going on, and how to navigate through that process, versus just saying, okay, we're meeting on these days at this time in the gym, and that's it. And for some people that works depending upon their goals. But I think the nice thing about the process that you, Nathan, have developed is that, and also people that that are in this community of yours, it's kind of it kind of checks most of the boxes, if not all, that most individuals need, especially I would say for general population individuals who have no experience with fitness, or no idea of how to do it. And I recall actually in college, I lost about 30 pounds, kind of unbeknownst to me, because and it just happened because I was walking all over Michigan State University's campus, where I went to, undergrad, go green. And so, I would have classes that were like 45 minutes of a walk away, and I'd have to walk both ways. And sometimes, and even like if we were going out at night, we would walk because I didn't have a car on campus at the time, or, take my bike. And so, but just by doing that more, I lost the weight, and I didn't really change anything in terms of my like work and working out. It was like the concept of, okay, you're going to go to the gym. And it was that I was going to go there and do the elliptical, or do some like treadmill or cardio for a little bit, and then do like, okay, today's upper body day, so I'm going to do like chest, bicep, shoulders, back, and then done. And then like, I would try to get on a leg day here and there, but there was nothing that was ever like planned to say, okay, how am I tracking? How am I doing here? Or how am I getting stronger? Am I getting leaner? There was no like, there's no goal, and there was no like, there was not a well charted out plan, because I didn't have a goal. And I think that's the other part of it, is that if you don't have a goal, it's hard to transform and just say, okay, whatever that is, whether that's a process you're going through, a physical, both emotional, even spiritual. I think that a goal is necessary. Even if that goal says, I want to feel better, that's fine. Like, I think, and that's something that I even see with some of my patients, like where they may not have a specific goal of, oh, I want to lose X amount of weight, or I want to be photo shoot ready. I mean, I haven't had any photo shoot people yet, but after our post we just did, we'll see what happens if people want to come to me for some help with that. But otherwise, I think that it's a great process, because it gives you an opportunity to to really put some work into yourself and to get to know yourself, because you're spending more time with yourself in terms of doing the check-in and doing some introspection and doing the steps and learning about supplements. And you may be participating in the Facebook communities, or even doing some research on your own about health and fitness, and that might spark other conversations. And I know for sure that this process brought Hirsch and I together, and some of the other friends that you know of in the US together. And what's interesting is now, like whether that's, with you or even like Kunal or anybody else in the community, it's like this international, like, even though I know that, there are both genders, but it's like a brotherhood of sorts that you create in terms of, everybody has gone through this or that's going through this process. It's a community that you've created in terms of being able to connect on so many different levels, and that's what I find that's interesting about this too, because you see and you read about stories about somebody in India, somebody in Hong Kong, somebody in the UK, somebody in Africa somewhere, or in the US and Canada. And it just shows you that like everybody is a lot more similar than we think. And I think that that's an important thing to consider, because a lot of us just want the best out of ourselves. And I think that using the physical as a vehicle can be very useful to do so. And that's been kind of my experience with it.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and it's a lot covered there as well from the community aspect, and even just from your own experiences as you went through that. As you went through that journey of fat loss and whatnot, what do you think was the biggest struggle point that you had during that time?
I think that, and this is something that you've become somewhat of an expert at, in some ways, you're a adopted member of the Indian community at this point. I think that the issues are that when you have the mentality of eating whatever you want, whenever you want to, and not understanding its impact on your body weight, or on how many calories you're consuming, portion sizes, that was definitely an awakening process in the beginning to say, okay, you're cooking with, we use like organic olive oil sprays and whatnot like that, versus actually pouring the oil in the pan, and how that can make a difference in your calorie intake, or how much, like, I use the peanut butter example a lot, and I think you have too. Like, people will say, oh, I just had some peanut butter and celery, or peanut butter and apples, or whatever they're using to consider a healthy snack. But until you actually weigh it, you don't know how much you're consuming. And or at least if you're using the same plate or the same bowl on a daily basis, then you can say, okay, I can see that this part of the plate that's consumed by whatever you're putting in it, that's, and that's where the guesstimating comes into play, where you talk about the plate rules and stuff like that, where and you guys do a good job of that. But I think that part was definitely an awakening process in the beginning. And then I think also just managing social expectations and social and social gatherings, and going out. It's not uncommon for, if we were going out to dinner, to have, maybe 2, 3, 4 alcoholic beverages, and having, appetizers, an entree, desserts, and, people would, and now with the large culinary culture that a lot of the cities have, and a lot of chefs being much more creative than I think we've seen in the past, and I think more access to higher end food, or any food for that matter. I mean, now you can just scroll on your phone and go on DoorDash or Grubhub, and it's at your door, And so I think it was just one of those things to say, okay, if you are going to go out and have that meal, how do you make sure that you're not going to pay for it later or regret it? And I think that that's an important part too, because you never want to regret something, right? Even if you go out and have a great time, I think everybody deserves to have a good time. I mean, that's what life is for. It's meant for enjoyment and to make the most out of it. But you shouldn't feel bad about it. And I think planning how do you do that is important too. And sometimes it's also acceptance to say, and even dealing with the coaching process, a lot of times the question would be, well, are you looking to is your goal to maintain, or is it to have a fat loss this week? And so that also is important to say, okay, well, if you are going to do this, then you may have to accept the fact that you're not going to see the fat loss that you want to see. And I think that that's an important concept as well, to say, okay, accepting the outcomes of your actions, whichever way they are. Because if you
Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. That's the biggest thing that what we do with that. Like, ever since we've brought that into play, a lot more people have felt less guilty because they've known the cost. I think it's understanding the cost of your actions, and not being a silent or non-witness to it. Like, a lot of people like to choose to not look at the cost of their actions, but ultimately that cost of the actions will then relate back to something. You're either going to get less fat loss, or you're not going to get anything, or you might get weight gain. So helping people understand that if you choose this way, you will get this. If you choose this way, you get this. Red pill versus blue pill.
Exactly.
And if you can, and you're happy to make that choice, then you get this outcome. And that's beautiful, because a lot of people may choose maintenance, or even just staying where they're at for the whole week, just to enjoy that meal out with their birthday or someone else's birthday. And that's okay. But there will become a point when that choice will be different, and there will be different events that will require different choices. And that's when you can get the fat loss. And that's when people have true choice, or quote unquote autonomy.
Oh, 100%. And I think that, the other part of it is that what I have realized is that if I miss if I don't get at least 2 training sessions in a week, I can start to feel my mood suffer. And I think that, like, let's say there's also social events going on, I actually enjoy them less the weeks that I haven't gotten all my training in, because when I do my training, not only have I gotten to the point where I've been able to start feeling the quote unquote pump that, like people like Arnold talk about, in terms of the weightlifting world. Not to say I'm the strongest out there at all, but it's just more so that endorphin kick that I get at some point during the workout, especially if I've checked all the boxes that morning in terms of hydration, a little bit of caffeine, a little bit of the creatine, and then you get into the gym and you start working, and you get that pump, which I'm sure you felt many times over that, and then you're able to go out and enjoy your time with your friends, your family, your loved one, significant other. Then it's just like frosting on the cake or icing on the cake in that respect, because you've checked all the boxes then, and you haven't and you don't necessarily walk away from it feeling guilty, because you put the work in, whether you've gone out to celebrate or not that week. But to me, I think it's one of those things where now I know that if I don't work out 2, 3, 4 times a week, then I know that my expectation is going to be probably a little bit less of a invigorated mood, if I were to put it the best way. Like, I think that it's I find that my mood is just so much better when I have done the training. And so it's funny, because one of my mentors, who unfortunately is no more, he used to be a big workout nut, actually. I mean, he used to work out. I mean, he was a surgeon. He was a businessman. I mean, he did so many different things. And I don't think the guy slept more than 4 or 5 hours a night, but like, he would wake up at like 3 a.m, work out, be at the hospital by like 4, or like 5, 6:30, 6 a.m, and be ready to go. And I asked him, I said, well, what's your what's your driving force? And this was probably 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, when I had this conversation with him. And he simply said it was, cheaper than seeing a psychiatrist. And I think that he's so true, because so much of what we get out of investing in ourselves translates into our mood, into our sense of capability. Because if you can go into the gym, and let's say you've never lifted a weight, and I hand you a 5-pound dumbbell, which I think is probably, or maybe 2.5 pounds, and now you're achieving that, and then you go on and you can achieve the next weight, 5 pounds, and then you can achieve 10 pounds, and then you keep on going in that sequence. Or even but then you can say, hey, you know what, I never could think that I could lift that 10-pound weight, because I was only at 2.5, but now I'm at 10, now I'm at 20, now I'm at 30, now I'm at 40. And now you're achieving more and more. And I think that sense of achievement and that possibility translates to other parts of your life, because you're like, you know what, hey, if I can get over this hump in the gym, I can do more outside of the gym with my life, in terms of whether that's business, whether that's with your family, whether that's academically, if somebody's on an academic path, or whatnot. Because I think that there's a strong connection between physical and mental resilience, and also toughness. And I recall that when I used to play tennis in school, there was this concept of mental toughness. And because in tennis, and even in golf, it's an individual sport, just like a transformation process, but you do have coaching, you do have some community there, but a lot of it is, at the end of the day, how much are you investing in yourself? Because when you get out there, using the tennis court or the golf course as a metaphor, it's all about you and the ball, right? I mean, it's all, and I think, Nathan, you play a little golf, right? I mean, yeah. And so, at the end of the day, if you hit the golf ball beautifully, that's because of you, because everything was in sync. Your swing speed, your focus on the ball, you were a little bit relaxed, you weren't thinking too much, and you just went for it. And sometimes you fib it, and you're like, hey, what happened? How come I sliced it? How come there was a major draw, or you didn't even hit the ball? And I think that's a lot of the same thing is true with this process and how it implicates into your life. Because if you're doing everything correctly, then the chances of you hitting that ball or being successfully on the tennis court, whether you're using that as a literal or figurative translation, I think that just increases your chances of success. And I think that that's the part of it where Autonomy and other training programs like yourself do a great job of helping you realize that from kind of even an indirect way, if it's not just direct. Because I think that, and I remember that I can't remember where this was discussed, but I think it was on one of your podcasts. But the concept of okay, sometimes the photo shoot is put on such a pedestal of okay, this is the goal, but then it's okay, after that, where do you go? And I think that, and to be honest, I'm not an expert at this at all. And, that's kind of, I did my photo shoot in October, and now we're in December. So it's been 6 to 7 weeks since I've done it. But, and that's where I'm also okay, well, where do I go from here in terms of, I have some ideas of my goals in terms of that and whatnot, but it's also now figuring out what's the next part that I want to achieve with this process and navigating through that. And so, and I think that's important because, and that's the difference between the person who I think, you'll see a lot of athletes, right, that will peak in, let's say high school or even college or whatnot, or they'll win one championship and then they're done. And then you see them going out in the clubs, you see them, living the big life, etc. And then, they'll either get out of shape or they lose motivation for whatever reason because they've gotten there. But then you look at, and then sometimes they even go bankrupt, or you'll never hear about them again, right? Yeah. And then you see the people out there like the LeBrons, like the Michael Jordans, the Tiger Woods, and you look at Tiger Woods. I mean, yes, there are a lot of controversies about what he did, in his extracurricular life.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, there is something about those individuals that this guy had a compound fracture of his leg, which is kind of a death sentence to most athletes. And this guy still wants to go out and play in the tour. He just announced, I mean, not the tour, but he still wants to play and, pick and choose tournaments that he's going to go to. And it's that mentality of, I think, achievement and also just wanting to be better and how you can do that. I mean, whether it's Kobe, whether it's Ronaldo, whether it's Messi or any of these guys out there, I mean, they all kind of have a similar, or even like, Roger Federer or Djokovic or any of these guys out there. I mean, these guys, and that's where that mental toughness comes into play, because whether they're part of a team or different teams, or they're playing as a single sport, I think that the mental process is very similar. And I think that that's something that's always notable to me about these individuals and what we can learn from them and how to implicate that in our lives,
Yeah, and it's 100% true. And I think breaking it down in like the fat loss and maintenance terms is that I think the goal of fat loss for most people has been built up in their minds for years and years and years because of failed attempts before. So the more it gets built up, the more it becomes like this impossible feat, but it becomes a higher focus every single time. So the more you want it, the more you think about it, the more that you really desire it. That you've been lots of people desire this goal for years and years and years, and it's very similar to how, like you said, about big sporting athletes, they desire this championship, or they desire winning the Premier League, or they desire winning the World Series, and then that they hyper focus on that for a period of years, even without success, even if you're dieting, even without weight gain or regain, they still focus on it because it's a large topic to talk about. Diet is everywhere. And you always start on a Monday every single time.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when you finally get this particular goal that you've been hyper focused for 5, 10, 15 years, sometimes 20 to 30 years, you'd never really thought about afterwards, because your self-belief in yourself was so low that you probably never thought you were going to get there. And if you did think you were going to get there, then when you got there, you were still surprised that you got there. And then after that, you almost like, well, I've never really done any of this fitness stuff or health stuff without having this goal of fat loss. And when you take away the goal, you take away the destination, then the paddling and the driving towards something becomes aimless. It becomes there's no reason to do it, or the destination doesn't become clear, or the sat navigation isn't able to pick your best route because you don't have a destination. And I think when you do chase that second goal, whatever that second goal is, it is always not going to be as important as the first one, because you would have to let like it fester for 20 years to be important to you to have the same equivalence of value, which is not going to be. So when people do separate that second goal, they're like, I just don't feel like I want to do this compared to the fat loss goal. It's like, yeah, you don't, not as much. You will never want a goal as much as that, really. Unless, financial riches and, wanting a family and all those type of things. It's probably on par with all of those because it responds to self-confidence and whatnot like that. So having those second goals is quintessentially important, but that you need to recognize as a person going through it, that though it will never be as important, but the second goal that you have has to just be set, because without the destination, your sat nav can't go anywhere near it, or you can't direct yourself. So like what I've been playing with now with myself and setting and for clients as well is setting them a year target, what they want to do in 1 year, and then breaking it down from there. Because year targets seem to be really, really effective to get like a higher level view, to set that sat nav up on the right direction. And then as you go, you can make smaller directive turns, and you could make smaller goals towards that. And then that's where you can build it up from there. You can have like a high, long view, and then you can create a short goal after you've made the long one. But, yeah. What are you working towards now? What have you been thinking about in terms of long term?
Well, I think long term, I think the biggest thing is that not to return to where things were, before, and where people can see even on our Instagram at Grover Wellness where I was in 2015 or in 2019. So that's the biggest thing is not to revert to that. B, I think for me, at the weight I was at the photo shoot, I was less than 160 pounds at the photo shoot. And so I was in the upper 150s. And so I think I would like to be a little bit stronger in terms of muscle mass. I think that's definitely a goal that I'm working towards. And then, being able to, and I think the long-term goal, and I've discussed this even before, with some people, and that this is about a long-term process, not to say, okay, what can I do at 35, but what am I going to be able to do at 55? Or what am I going to be able to do at 65 or 75 or even beyond that? And I think it's the activities of daily living in terms of like, am I going to be able to get down on the ground and get up quick enough? When as we have a daughter now, and if we have more kids, and being able to do that effectively for the next 10, 15 years as they're growing up, and am I going to be able to chase after them and keep up with them? And we have some family members now that you can see that because of knowledge, and also their lives were pretty much dedicated to their work and providing for family, and they didn't have the opportunities or the, I guess you could say, the how to invest in themselves. And at that point with technology, it wasn't as easily accessible to have an online coach and the way things are now. And so you can see that because of they didn't invest as much time in their bodies or into their physical health, that now their ability to walk has reduced, their ability to climb stairs as quickly has reduced, their ability to carry things has reduced. And that's one thing that I don't want. I want that I am able to do everything I can do today for, hopefully the rest of my life, truthfully, because, I can accept that there are some things that I may not be able to do. I may not be able to hit the golf ball as well as as hard as I could now, maybe at 90, I'll accept that. But, but then you see these individuals that are out there that are like 80, 85 running marathons and doing triathlons and all this other stuff. I mean, so that it shows you that there is potential there, as long as you're making the investments correctly. So to me, this is a longevity game. This is not just to say, where am I going to be in a year from now? But I do think that maintaining where I am now and not letting myself go too loose is important, because that's going to help me get to that long-term goal. And I think a big other factor is that, as you've seen in the Indian community, our genetics are, unfortunately not the best. I mean, there's cardiovascular disease, stroke, diabetes, cancers. Many of these things that I've just mentioned are actually in my family history. And so as a result, it's just like, I don't want those things in my life, because I've seen the negative effects that they have on family members, and how it's reduced their ability to do things. And, at the end of the day, when you find out you have cancer, that takes a big load on your mind, whether you show it or not. I mean, it takes a load on your mind, on your body, and it's a big weight to carry around. Or even if you do have, let's say you need to go and get a stent done. Now, at some point in your mind, you're going to be thinking, well, how long is this stent going to work for me? And for those of you listening, a stent is a medical device that it helps to open up one or more of the arteries of the heart to allow blood flow and oxygen to go to the heart. And so, these are all things that are there that, I don't want to have to worry about taking a pill to lower my blood sugar at some point. I don't want to have to worry about those things. And I think that there are, and as an integrative and functional medicine doctor now, I think using the body and the body's own healing mechanisms that we have is so important. And I even remember Nathan discussing with you once about like adaptogens, which is a whole nother podcast in of itself. And I remember you had mentioned that you were like, you know what, honestly, sleep is one of the best adaptogens I've felt in my process, or that you had observed in even your coaching. And I couldn't agree more, because it's these are mechanisms we have. And it's not just, oh, I was in bed for 9 hours or 8 hours or whatnot. It's about what was your quality of that process. And I think also that's the process that I appreciated more, is the quality of the experience. And even, to kind of to take a little bit off of your nomadic journeys pre-COVID, and I think I've seen you kind of getting back into that swing of things now. Like, if you're in a foreign country, right, and you're traveling, or even if you're in a domestic city that you've never been in, and you take a taxi cab everywhere around because that's just what you do, versus now you're going to say, you know what, we're going to go walk to that coffee shop, even if you're not even like, on a diet journey, forget that part, but you're going to say, okay, I'm going to walk to the coffee shop, get myself a latte, get myself a morning breakfast or whatever. And then you're going to walk around. Maybe you're going to see some museums. Maybe you're going to go to some markets. You might go see a show. And then you're going to walk to lunch. Maybe you're by a beautiful, building or a park, or even you're overlooking the Mediterranean Ocean if you're lucky. And then from there, you might walk back to your hotel. You might relax for a little bit, and then, or wherever you're staying, your Airbnb or whatnot. And then, but then throughout the whole day, not only have you had more opportunity to see things by walking around, but you've also now like invested in your health by and you may have burnt a lot of the calories that you consumed in the process, but the quality of that experience is so much better. Right. And I think that goes back to the sleep part too, that I was mentioning, that our body's ability to heal itself is so important to consider, because if we are always thinking in our head that we don't have that ability and we need to depend upon medications, procedures, and whatnot, then we're setting ourselves up for a high level of disappointment and possibly illness, which is not what we want as physicians for our patients. We want wellness. And that's what I try to teach my patients and educate them, is that, your body has a lot of the tools it needs in it. We just need to get those tools out. And I think processes like autonomy help that to occur, because now you're investing more time in yourself, and you're investing more time in optimizing this machinery we have, right? I mean, you wouldn't put dirty diesel fuel in a Formula One car and expect to win. It's the same concept for us, right? Where we need to have the right fuel. And when I say fuel, it's not just the food you're eating. It's not just the hydration and all that. It's also the consumption of, are you on social media all day and being consumed by negative events in the world? Are you being consumed about what's going on in other people's lives, or comparing yourself to others, or and whatnot? And I think that's also important to consider too. What is your consumption overall? Those are some of the things that I've felt as well through this process.
Yeah, that's huge, and that's some huge benefits as well. And I think that's a good way to end that podcast there, in terms of the benefits and the success that it's had as well. So thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate this opportunity and look forward to interacting more as we go through.
Yeah, just tell everybody where they can see you on the
Sure. Instagram. So Instagram, you can follow us at Grover Wellness. That's GroverWellness. And then also you can, if you're interested, email us at info@groverhealth.com. And we'll be happy to talk. And then if you want to even drop us a DM or whatever, we'd be happy to interact. Happy to help anybody, really.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Keshav. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate it. Yeah.